'Cause I'm yours to keep if you want to.
So where are you from?
That's the question.
Yeah.
Like where I was born. Like we're going all the way back.
Yeah, I mean, I find it interesting. Like I asked Ty that question, and he was like Utah, and I was like,
Let's go a little bit deeper.
well, no, I mean, obviously he went deeper with it, but I was like, you know, I tell people like I'm from Los Angeles, like I was born here, and then I grew up in Utah, and he was just like, oh, like I just skipped that stage altogether. So I'm always curious, just like where people start that when they
Gotcha.
answer that question, like where you're from could, you know, obviously lead to any number of things, or, you know, but that's just where we start.
All right, sweet. So I was born in Chicago,
Okay.
Illinois.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Like, really?
Yeah. For some reason, I thought you were born in Minnesota.
No,
Or Minneapolis.
So my family's all from Chicago. So like my mom and dad are both from Chicago, met in Chicago. And then
Cool.
when I was born, they're like, oh, we should move out to the suburbs. We have kids now. And they didn't dig the energy.
Yeah.
Like they're more like, my dad's an artist, sort of like hippie vibes. My mom's pretty cool. And she was a little bit of a hippie as well. And they chose like a very affluent suburb,
Yeah.
which was like, we should have our kids here.
Huh.
And they just weren't into the vibe.
Okay.
So probably around second grade or so, they knew they didn't want to be there, and they started looking all around the country for like a place to that they would want to raise kids.
Yeah.
And I think like the final two spots were like Raleigh, North Carolina,
Interesting.
and then Minneapolis.
Okay.
And they ended up choosing Minneapolis. And they waited for my sister to finish 5th grade.
Okay.
And then I had just finished 3rd grade and like went away for the summer to summer camp. And then I like came home. We like moved right to Minneapolis.
Nice.
And when we were driving up there, before we even like got to our new house, we went and picked up like a puppy. That was part of like the bribe of,
Cool.
of like moving, I
Yeah,
think.
of course.
So we got a dog. We moved to Minneapolis, and our neighborhood was super cool. It was sort of old school where you could like walk to the park, and there
Nice.
was a little, not like, what's the right, like a little downtown area where you could like get a sub, and there was a burger shop and an ice cream spot, and
Sure.
you could walk to the movie store. So before I could drive, everybody would come over to my house, and you know, my parents would give us like $10, and you like go rent a movie, get like a frozen pizza or
Sure.
whatever, and
Yeah.
like come back to the house. And then in the winter, they would flood the park, and it would turn into a skating rink.
Okay.
And so I would like tie my skates on at the house, or have like my dad or mom like
Sure.
help me get them tight, put guards on, and walk down and like skate at the park like with friends.
Nice.
Yeah. So like definitely like claim Chicago,
Yeah.
because I'm not like Minnesotan. Like that's not like the energy we put out there.
Yeah.
But I loved growing up in Minneapolis. It was amazing.
Yeah, I like that. You know, that's what's kind of fascinating to me about like these questions. Like Ben's gonna eventually, hopefully, come into, and
Yeah.
like I'm just genuinely curious to know what people's thoughts were growing up in different parts of this country. Like it's something you don't really get a chance to talk about unless you specifically have friends who come from other places, and you actually start getting into those things. But it like. I never explored anything. I've never been to the Carolinas. Super interested to go.
Yeah.
I've never been to anywhere in Minnesota, but I have a few friends now who've all brought it up and said that it's awesome.
In the summer.
Yeah. I mean, I've actually flown through there once, and it was like the coldest day of the year, and it was literally like minus 40 or something like that.
Yeah, we would have school canceled because of cold. Like there was one day, and like we would have to like put on like snow pants and shit to go like wait for the bus. And there was
I
one
bet.
day where my sister and I went to go catch the bus, and the bus came and nobody was on it. It was really cold out. And we're like, oh man, everybody like must have just gotten drove because it's like so cold.
And you got there.
We got to school and school's canceled.
Oh, shit.
And so luckily the bus driver was pretty cool, and he was friends with us. And so he drove us back.
Not
And fun
surprised.
fact, our bus driver was actually the DJ at my bar mitzvah.
No way.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not surprised at all, honestly.
He was our bus driver first, and then he had like a side hustle as like a DJ. His name was Russ.
Cool.
And yeah, he DJ'd my bar mitzvah party.
You got bar mitzvah there then, obviously.
Yeah, in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And
How
it
was
was-
that?
Well, it's interesting. So like where we lived in Chicago was like very like pretty Jewish
Sure.
suburbs. So we would get like school would be closed on like high holidays and stuff like that. And so Minnesota just have a very different energy. Like
Yeah.
a lot of Scandinavians, not a real big like vibrant Jewish community there.
Huh.
And I actually ended up going to a Christian middle school and high school. So,
Okay.
So my bar mitzvah was hot because it was like the only game in town. Like where if I was in Chicago, you have like 2 every weekend and you're just like booked out, and it's just like insane with everybody trying to like go crazy for it.
Did it feel weird having that dynamic? Like being basically like one of the few, I would assume, Jewish people in your school?
Yeah, it was me and my sister.
Yeah.
For the most part. Maybe there was like 1 or 2 others at most. Middle school wasn't a big deal because it was Old Testament.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, I know this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, this is easy. Like, great. And then high school got a little bit different energy because it was a Lutheran school.
Okay.
And it was great. Like, I got to learn a lot about it. There's a lot of people who I think are really strong and like really into their religion and faith, which is great. But they don't know anything about anything else.
For sure.
Like I had to take like Bible class, like Jesus's life. Like I was getting a grade that affected my GPA. I had to go to chapel and convocation twice a week.
Wow.
And there was like praise band and shit, which like it started to get a little uncomfortable. And then I was in some discussion-based classes where I like was told that like I was going to hell because I was Jewish.
Wow.
And
What age?
That was probably like sophomore, junior year.
Crazy. Yeah. I mean, our like growing up in Park City, like it was predominantly like I would say Mormon, maybe Mormon Catholic. So it was similar. Like we were like one of 4 families that were Jewish in Park City at the time. Like
That's wild.
to have, well, I mean, I'm sure there probably were more, but as far as like our congregation, like it was literally 4 families. It's like we'd go meet at like different people's houses and have just like dinners for holidays and things like that. And then eventually it moved to like a random office building, which like kind of became, the Sunday school. And as it like grew in a community sense, like that was basically all we had. And like in high school, I don't really remember anything. Junior high school for me, I was in Montessori school until 4th grade. From like 5th grade to freshman year, like I don't remember anything in particular with like religion being a factor.
Right.
But then same thing, like the Mormon like religion classes, like you'd have like
there was programming in school that was based
but it wasn't
around
mandatory.
Mormonism.
Wasn't mandatory, but it was programming.
It was an elective.
Yeah, like you could go to.
Did you take any?
No, I don't know if you could. Honestly,
They're like, no, you're not Mormon.
They're really like super strict on who gets any kind of
Public or private school?
Public.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And were there certain like Mormon holidays that you would get off that like we wouldn't get off, or is it just a traditional? Like I don't know enough about it.
Yeah, no, honestly, I don't either, and I'm trying to think of.
You're like John Smith Day, like
yeah,
sweet,
no, that's what I was trying
weekend.
to think. I was trying to think if there was something like that. I don't think there was. At least not that our school recognized.
Gotcha.
There might have been, but honestly, my memory is just total shit. So I can't
But so,
remember.
what was your experience from like sort of being like in the minority at that? Like, did that feel like weird, or like were the Mormon kids like jerks about it? Like,
no. Honestly, Mormon people are generally super sweet,
like super nice,
ridiculously nice,
successful. Like
I feel like they're living a good life. I don't know. I mean, I feel like my mom has a different experience about Utah in general, being more of like a masculine kind of like we got this kind of vibe.
Oh, interesting.
She never really liked that. Like she felt like she was not really acknowledged in like the banks or something, like in a way that was like equal to being addressed like how my dad was addressed. My mom always kind of picked up on that. So for that, she always kind of had like a bit of a sting with like
that
Utah.
sucks.
But I don't necessarily know that that's anything to do with religion in that aspect. I mean, obviously nobody knew like, oh, you're Jewish, like,
right.
So for me, I don't think it really made any difference. I didn't really have any friends that were religious. I mean, I knew Mormon people. Most of the Mormon people I knew were kind of like Jack Mormon, like not participating in the actual religion. So just like born Mormon, but don't actually like go.
And they'd like drink soda pop.
No, they
like,
drink alcohol, like the whole
shit.
nine. Like Jack Mormon's kind of like, I guess how people would look at like Jewish people who are non-Orthodox. Be like, oh man, you're gonna eat a cheeseburger? Like that's crazy,
Bacon
like,
cheeseburger.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
Yeah. So like that's kind of like the Jack Mormon
Gotcha.
vibe. But anyway, back to you in high school. You had the programming with the kind of
that was an
Lutheran
interesting vibe, right?
Yeah.
Because like one of the classes, especially like senior year, and I tried to get out of like Bible class, right? I'd be like, I shouldn't have to take this. That didn't work. But they had, usually you have like world religions.
Okay.
But we had like uniqueness of Christianity, where you would compare like all the world religions like back to Christianity.
Okay.
And then my senior year, we had a discussion-based class, which I guess a lot of like really devout Christians will like lose their faith when they go to college, because they get challenged by like a
Sure.
lot of new ideas and beliefs
Yeah.
and other people. And so they're like, okay, we're going to address this now. So we're going to have these tough conversations in a controlled environment by a teacher to sort of get after that. And so, you know, stuff would come up and people were like, yeah, you're going to hell. And I was like I went through this phase where I was like very into the Dalai Lama. And I was like, so you're telling me like that this guy who's like the most peaceful dude ever, who's focused his like been recruited as like a kid and has focused his life on peace and like helping other people and like not killing any other living thing.
He's going to hell.
That guy's going to hell.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah. And I was like, that
Yeah.
makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
And so I think in some ways that experience made me kind of like more into being Jewish, that it was just like unique. And I was like, this just makes sense. Like, forget all this like judgment.
Yeah.
It's like, be a good person. And there were all these people who were like, oh, we're good people. And then they'd be like jerks and like spreading rumors and like talking shit about people. And you're like, okay, but you're in the praise band. So that means you're like,
Yeah.
no, it just doesn't shake out. And I had some great friends. Like high school was a fun experience. It was a small high school, good academically, got me into college, like, which was great.
Sure.
But my last like year of school, I was pretty like over that whole idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely an interesting experience moving from somewhere that was like super Jewish community to Minnesota that like didn't have that energy, and then going to like a Christian school. Like
Yeah.
that was an interesting experience.
And then where'd you go to college?
I went to school at the University of Wisconsin in Madison.
Okay.
So I wanted like a big college, like university experience. Ended up choosing Wisconsin, which was like close to home. I had my closest buddy from high school ended up going there too.
Nice.
Yeah. So like it was great.
And then where'd you move after college? Were you living at the dorm, living on site when you were
In college?
Yeah.
No, I just lived in a dorm my first year.
Okay.
And then I lived in an apartment, and we'd get like cool different like apartments with like different friends.
Nice.
It was great. And I mean, campus is beautiful. And then I would be gone every summer. I would go work at my summer camp.
Okay.
When I was in college. So
So-
I like barely lived at home anymore.
Was that your first job?
No, I mean like my first job, like real job.
I mean,
even
before a real job.
Before real job, I would like hustle, you know, I like babysat, I would like shovel, you know, like walkways or people's driveways for people. I
Sure.
like would mow lawns,
Yeah.
stuff like that. My first real job,
Were all those hustle jobs based on your own, like, I'm the boss, or did you ever go like work for somebody who like had a company and was employing you to go do those things?
no, it was like when I was younger, like for neighbors and stuff,
Sure.
right? Like a couple bucks. It
Yeah.
wasn't like an organized like landscape or anything like
Got
that.
it.
It's like I would take, you know, like our mower and like do somebody's like down the block.
Sure.
And like sweet, make a couple bucks.
Yeah, I know you're entrepreneurial, so I just didn't know if it was like I always
Yeah,
am
yeah,
interested
yeah.
just like kind of what age that kicked in, you know, to be like, oh, I had a business when I was 7 and it was Noah's mowers,
No.
and we'd go around and just seeing.
I had like little hustles at like camp where
Yeah.
I would like bring like extra candy,
Sure.
and we would like sell stuff to
Yeah.
other campers,
Of
and there was
course.
other like, you know, other supplies that we would sell and
Yeah.
that were higher priced items. And so we was probably a little bit entrepreneurial there.
Okay.
But never had like a super strong like, oh, this is my business when I was younger.
Yeah.
But that was pretty fun. First like real job, like working for somebody else, I worked at a sub shop
Okay.
called Big Mike's Super Subs.
Okay. Chain?
There were a couple of them in
Okay.
like Minneapolis, and I feel like it either got bought out by Jimmy John's, because it's the same thing as Jimmy John's. Like
Okay.
the whole menu is the same.
Interesting.
And the exciting thing there was you got to like make your own sandwich, like one sandwich a shift, and you got like free soda.
Nice. High school, that's a big deal.
Totally. And so it was like pretty fun. And then I think I only made it, I wasn't there that long, because I ended up like going to work at camp or something. I was there for like a couple months, and I think I was on the veggie station, and I wasn't allowed to slice lettuce because that was like a dangerous machine. But I was the one, you had to know like what veggies went on like which sandwich.
Yeah.
And you would do that. And then we had to watch out because some kids would steal the bottom parts of like the soda machine. So then when you like pressed your cup and
Oh.
it would like go everywhere.
Yeah.
And so kids would like steal it as like a prank. So we
Sure.
had to like keep an eye out for those guys.
Okay.
But it was great. You know, it was like
Yeah.
super fun. And then camp was like my first like real
Away
job.
from home.
Yeah.
Managing other kids.
Yeah. I mean, you start when you're like 16.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up there and yeah, it was fantastic, you know,
Yeah.
because I was working up there with all my friends and it's on a beautiful lake. And so you're working crazy hours for very little money, but you love it.
Full summer?
Yeah. I mean, as a camper, you're there for either 4 weeks or 8 weeks. As
Okay.
a counselor, you're there usually 1 or 2 weeks before the kids get there and then like a week afterwards to like set up and take down.
And that was like something you were still doing through college or no?
Oh, yeah. I like stayed on there way too long.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just checking my Uber.
No, you're fine. How are we doing?
We've got 7:44. So we're
Okay.
good.
15 minutes.
Yeah, we're solid.
Cool.
So sorry, what was the question?
Was that something you started doing when you were in college? Like it was counseling for camp?
So I did that for a long ass time. Like
Yeah.
I was like obsessed with my camp at one point, thought I wanted to take it over and
Oh,
that's
wow.
what I wanted to do. So I was like a regular counselor and then our camp is a big tripping program. So I love being outdoors and going
Yeah.
on adventures. And so as kids get older, you do bigger and longer trips. So it progresses, it builds up. And
Cool.
so being in Minnesota, like canoeing's really big there. There's some backpacking, but canoeing's really sweet.
Okay.
So I started off and I was a little dude, you know, like I'm still not like a giant person, but I was like small when
Okay.
I was like younger. And my first summer as a counselor, they put me with the oldest kids. And I was like, come on. Like,
Threw you in the deep end?
yeah. And it ended up being great because the older kids are the ones who are doing more tripping, which is
Oh,
what I
cool.
love.
Yeah.
And so I ended up doing all that. And then I had one group of kids who I was with for 4 summers in a row.
Oh,
So
nice.
I like really got to know them.
Sure.
So the first summer is, you know, you do like a 1-day trip, just like conditioning, and then you do a 3-day canoeing trip, a 5-day canoeing trip, and
Cool.
a 7-day canoeing trip. And then you do the same thing, 3-day backpack, 5-day backpack, 7-day backpack.
Nice.
And so you come back to camp in between, and that's super great. And then the next year they can choose to either go canoeing like all summer on like an intense 21-day canoe trip,
Whoa.
or they can go on a 6.5-week backpacking trip around the Pacific Northwest.
Damn. Both intense.
Yeah, and so I ended up leading the backpacking one.
What age are the kids who are coming to the camp
So
doing that type of program?
so that type of kids, the age range of kids is like 8 to like 16.
Oh, wow.
The kids who are
Younger.
on that trip, on like there's all the in camp activities, like you can go sailing and water skiing and arts
Sure.
and crafts and archery and sports and climbing wall, all that jazz. But then the kids, when you get older, you were going to your 8th grade, so like 13, 14, like 14 was for that 6.5-week backpacking trip where you get a van, 9 kids, you go, like we flew into Seattle, got our van, you go to the grocery store, load up on groceries. We would drive to the North Cascades, do 6 days there, come out, do laundry, get more groceries, drive somewhere else,
Nice.
and do like 5 days there.
So nothing intense in like a capacity of like you're not like hunting, you're not getting food in like while you're out there necessarily. It's not like survival-ish.
No, not survival. Like we're bringing plenty of food.
Okay.
You have like all the gear. Like
Yeah.
These are kids. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
I
So
mean,
it's like
you never know. I mean, honestly,
For sure.
I wish that those were things that like people were actually, I hate to say forced, but like forced into
learn
learning
those skills.
especially at that age. It'd
Yeah,
be awesome to
it's
be
true.
like, dude, I learned how to like full on survive, like outdoors. I can start a fire. I can go catch and gut fish and like
Yeah.
maybe kill small animals or figure out what berries and things are edible if there's things like that growing. Like that would be rad if it were like an actual possibility to do at that age, but
Yeah. I mean, like,
this wasn't that.
no. I mean, it's like, it's take a step back from that.
Yeah.
Like, where it's like you learn some great skills, right? Like, we're
Yeah.
teaching the kids how to like cook for themselves, which isn't like revolutionary, but for like a 13-year-old like kid,
Big.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like cool. You're cooking like for your group, and
Yeah.
you have to like work with the group, right? Because you're carrying this, you're carrying that. We get to camp, we got to put
Totally.
it all up together. We got to clean it up. You got to like get along with everybody.
Yeah.
And as a counselor, you're responsible for all these kids. Like you're their mom, you're their dad, you're their nurse, you're their cook, like
Yeah.
all of their disciplinarian, like all of these things. And so it was amazing working with this group of kids for 4 years because we just got to know each other so well. And some of these kids I'm still super close with now. I wrote college recommendation letters for them. Like I've been at a couple of their weddings.
It's awesome, man.
It's incredible. Like I feel so, and like same thing. I have like some of my counselors. One of my counselors is now the director of the camp. So we have this amazing, I mean, like
Yeah.
we have this very tight community of people that are really important to me
Sure.
from my time at camp.
Yeah.
And so after I led those trips, I was like one of the director type people where I was in charge of like a big group of kids and counselors. So they kept me like in camp to be a supervisor as opposed to like being able to go on trips anymore.
Makes sense. I mean, I could see how that could also be very like almost like addicting or like in that capacity that it's like fulfilling to stay doing that for like a lifetime career type thing. Cause it sounds pretty amazing, man. Like it's cool to have that kind of like outdoors, that kind of like helping kids in that capacity, kind of like in a coming of age sense and like being able to help them explore like nature and the world in that way, which obviously like I don't feel like anybody gets here in LA. Like,
Yeah, I mean, like it was amazing, right?
Yeah.
And you think about it, some of these kids, their parents, work a ton.
yeah,
So being with them for like 2 months straight, like 24 hours a day, basically, especially when you're in the woods, when there's not a distraction of phones and video games.
Yeah.
Like you're hanging out, like you get to the campsite, you're like going swimming, playing cards, like hanging around the campfire. It's a lot of FaceTime. Where
Yeah.
some of these kids, don't see their parents when they get home from school because their parents are working.
for sure.
So you get super close with the kids, your co-counselors, and then also like back in camp is super fun too.
Yeah.
Because there's our camp was like just boys, and then the same camp is just girls.
Okay.
Across the lake.
Okay.
Like same owner, same name, all that jazz. And so you would have like your summer girlfriend, and you like meet at night, and there was like a little hick bar like down the road where you'd go, and like beers were like $2.
Nice.
And so it was so fun.
Yeah, I bet.
You like go play darts, and like it was just great. And we'd have like campfires and campouts. We'd float the river on our days off.
Oh man.
So it was a blast.
Yeah. Sounds awesome.
Yeah, I mean it's still one of my favorite places to go to, and we try to go up most summers after the kids leave. Camp turns into a resort.
Cool.
I want you and like your brother and like some of our friends would go there. It'd be so
Yeah.
fun.
Be cool. We should try to plan that either for your birthday one year or see if we could sway tide for 1 year and go do that for
It's in August,
a trip.
so we could
Okay.
just do it for like a fun trip.
Yeah.
But like it'd be sweet. We could water ski, sail, fish, like do
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Sick.
Yeah.
We stay at the camp or
Yeah, you get a cabin. Like
Okay.
each group or family gets its own cabin. They do like meals and all that stuff.
Dude, that sounds awesome.
Shoot arrows. Like there's a rifle range. Like we would have a blast there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Will we be like oldest by a long shot, or is it at this point starting to become more of like a place that people just look at as almost like a vacation place where you go just because you want to go do like all those activities?
Yeah, it's a lot of former campers, and they'll bring
Okay.
up like their families, right?
Okay.
And some people bring up grandparents and stuff. So we'd be right in like the mix,
Okay.
right?
Cool.
So yeah, and
Awesome.
it's like especially if we brought our squad and like I always have friends up there each year. Like,
Yeah.
it's just a lot of laughs. Like it's so much fun.
Yeah. Sold.
Yeah.
So camp, you went from high school in Minneapolis,
Yep.
college in Wisconsin,
Yep.
started doing the camp counseling.
That was like during college, and then after college, I moved out to Colorado,
Okay.
and so I was working in Colorado in the winters, and then camp at the summer for a little bit.
How'd you land in Colorado?
So I finished school,
Mm-hmm.
had no idea what I wanted to do.
Okay. Interesting.
Went to camp for the summer, as I did every summer, and then afterwards, I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Ended up one of the camp families hired me to be their manny. So I went and lived with this family in Chicago for a couple months.
Nice.
Amazing family. Still like super close with all the kids, and the parents are some of my closest friends.
Cool.
And then I was like, I'm not really digging this. Like it was fine for like a little while. And I grew up spending like vacations in Colorado. Always thought about wanting to do that. I'll go do ski patrol, right? And then that'll take me to like medical school, and like I should be like a doctor or a paramedic or something.
Cool.
They weren't hiring, so I ended up applying to be a snowboard instructor.
Okay.
Got hired with my camp experience. Great. I know how to work with kids,
Sure.
and teach, stuff like that.
Easy.
Yeah. Ended up loving it, getting some really great clients, and getting to snowboard all the time. And then I got a job at night working at a restaurant. So I was just out there hustling.
What part of Colorado was that?
So like Aspen Snowmass.
Okay.
So the first year I was out there, I lived in Snowmass. That was my home mountain. But at Aspen, I like the restaurant I worked at was in Aspen.
Okay.
So it's like all together, and like I would just take the bus into Aspen like when I was done teaching.
Cool. That's not. I've never been to Colorado.
What?
Yeah, it's nuts.
Dude, that is nuts.
I think I went like maybe in high school we did like a thing. I think is like Dinosaur National Park. Does that ring a bell? Is that
Yeah, or Dinosaur National Monument, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's
Dinosaur
like
National Park.
well, either
There's something
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
And I think that's like East Colorado basically. So it's like kind of like West Colorado, which would be like our east border of Utah. But that was like something we did in like a school trip in the summertime. So it's like, nothing to do with actually why I'd want to go there, which would be for snowboarding and snow, related activities.
I mean, because you guys had great like hills out your back door. So it's like, why go so far?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also like,
It's fun to explore.
yeah. And I love exploring different ski resorts.
We would go to Utah at the end of the season. Like when it was mud season,
Okay.
everybody would like go down to like Moab
Oh, okay.
and like go explore there. So
Cool.
like people would go on like camping trips or, different things like that. And so I love Utah. But
Yeah.
like Colorado was fantastic to be like, okay, sweet. I'm done with school. I'm going to go live in like a ski town. Like this is amazing.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
So would you have residents like year round there and then just go back for camp in the summer, or how
It was
it
seasonal.
Yeah.
So I would like rent a furnished spot, and I had like my old, you guys never saw this car. I had this amazing old Volvo station wagon that I would drive across country.
Sick.
And I would load it up with my shit and drive back home, swap out some gear, drive it up to camp. After camp, drive back home, swap out some gear,
Yeah.
drive back to Colorado.
Damn, that's
And
a lot
just
of miles.
find a new like apartment. Oh yeah, and I would trek out and I would go visit friends on the way, like camp friends or college buddies. So I loved it. And then in between, I used to like go traveling. So like in the fall, I would usually travel internationally, and then in the spring, I would like travel domestically and like catch up with friends and see family and stuff like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Where'd you go internationally?
I spent a lot of time in South America.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so like I spent like 3 months in Peru and like just a little bit in northern Chile. Spent time in Argentina, like a month in Argentina, separate trip. Did some snowboarding down there, which was really cool.
Nice.
Because I had some friends from Colorado that were from Bariloche.
Okay.
And you would love Bariloche too, because they have like a big candy and chocolate thing, because like people immigrated from Swiss.
I'm all in.
Yeah, dude. We would like go snowboarding and then go to this like chocolate factory, and they would have like bakeries and baked goods and dulce de leche. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you would be like all about it, like snowboarding and sweets.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Yeah. So that was like incredible. Spent a bunch of time in Israel on like another trip. So it was great. So I was doing that for a while, like the seasonal stuff back and forth. And then eventually I was like, okay, like time to like stop going to camp. And I wanted to be in Colorado year round.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Interesting. What age were you when you were looking, like what age was that? Roughly.
So it was, let's see, it was 2010.
Okay.
So I was born in 84.
26.
So 26,
Yeah.
27.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Good age for that kind of like settle into a place a little bit, I feel like.
Yeah, and I just wanted to be there for the summer. Like
Yeah.
I wanted to not leave each time. Like I wanted to like put down like some roots.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, ended up sticking around there.
Awesome. And then when did you move from Colorado?
Like 5 years ago from
Okay.
now. I've been here for 5 years or 6
Really?
years almost.
That's it? I don't
Yeah.
know why I feel like it's been, I must have met you more or less when you first got here.
Pretty quick
Yeah.
at your brother's birthday.
Yeah.
He was like, my brother doesn't want to be here either. You guys will be friends. I was like, sweet, I like this guy.
Yeah. Oh, man.
But it's like when you move someplace new, you have to like say yes to any invitation.
Totally.
So I'm not like a club kid, but your brother's like, hey, come out for my birthday. I was like, yep.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's how we met.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what made you decide on LA after Colorado?
So, transition, and this is like when I started becoming like more entrepreneurial.
Mhm.
Let me check this real quick.
Yeah.
All right, we're good. 7:46, 3 minutes.
Cool.
So, I didn't realize I had this like entrepreneurial bug, but like in college, I was super involved with different like organizations. Like I was in a fraternity and like got involved in the leadership there. But the organization where I learned a ton was this one where we ran a ropes course and did team building workshops for like sports teams and fraternities, sororities, classes, all sorts of groups.
Okay.
And and we ran a ropes course, and because we had to have insurance on the ropes course, we had to be paid as employees. So that was my job. And then I ran the organization one year, and as like a 19-year-old kid, I was in charge of scheduling with like 32 staff. We had to apply to the school for our budget, which was a $150,000 budget. We had to do trainings and hirings, and
You were running a full business.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it was incredible.
Like a big, relatively like medium-sized business.
It was amazing. And I had no idea everything I was like learning from that experience.
Sure.
And then after school, I was like, okay, like it like hit me. So I had like all these like, at camp, I was like selling merch. So I did like custom, like cool camp gear. So the one thing that was like a huge success was like these beanies that I made. And I brought them, and I wanted one of these, but the minimum order was like 50. And I was like, fuck it. Like, I'll just like buy these.
Yeah.
And then I sold them to like all the counselors during pre-camp.
Nice.
So then when the kids arrived, all these counselors had this new gear. They freaked out. So they
Yeah.
ended up being like a huge hit.
Nice. Funny how that works.
Yeah. And so I just like started sort of like building out sort of like business in that way.
Yeah.
And then when I was in Colorado, the summer I stayed, these people were paying all this money for private lessons to ski and snowboard with me. And I would hang out with their kids or them, whatever it may be. Those same people came out in the summer. So I was like, why don't we start like an outfitter or like a camp type situation?
Yeah.
Those people, instead of paying the ski company, can pay us. So we started an outfitter where we would take our ski families doing overnight camping trips. Family camping trips was our specialty. And so that just led to different businesses. So then we started a frozen yogurt shop.
Okay.
In Colorado. And that's what like led us. Here, this guy's about to pull up.
Cool. Do you want to let him know to pull up to the back?
I don't think I can text him, so I'll probably just.
Yeah, it's great. Okay. So you were talking about basically running that entire outfit, and
Oh yeah, so I learned a lot in college from that. That
Yeah.
led me to start these different businesses,
Mhm.
and so different levels of success. And so the Froyo shop
Mhm.
was something we started because at the time Froyo was just hot. Like we would go visit friends.
what was this, like 2016, 15, something like
Like
that?
2000.
Earlier?
Yeah, 2012.
Okay, so you were
probably.
early. Maybe that was when it popped. I can't remember,
I mean,
honestly.
like the chains were big, right? There was
Yeah.
like all the like what was the big one? Not like Cold Stone, but Pinkberry.
Yeah.
So like Pinkberry was big, Menchie's was big, and every time we would go visit friends in other cities, they'd be like, "You got to go to my local Froyo spot." And we're like, "What? We didn't have Froyo because town was too small and the economics didn't make sense."
Sure.
So we ended up finding we almost did like a salad concept along with Froyo because real estate's really expensive in like downtown Aspen.
Okay.
So what we ended
Sure.
up finding was this little structure that before was an information stand, and we got it. We were like, we should do a food truck. Food trucks aren't allowed in Aspen. So we ended up getting this place where an information stand was rezoned to be a temporary food vendor. So what that meant was we got 50 square feet, and it had to be a structure that we could take down.
50 square feet.
So we built a little, we called it the Froyo Shack. We called it Red Fox Frozen Yogurt. We did all of our own like research. We found the machines. We found a local dairy that was doing organic frozen yogurt.
Nice.
Found the machines, did like limited toppings, like fresh fruit.
Sure.
And we borrowed some money from one of our ski clients. He gave us a loan. We ended up paying him back after the first month of being open. We just worked our asses off every single day.
Epic.
Yeah, paid him off. And it was a great little business. And then in the winter, we would do late night like drunk food. So
Okay.
like hot dogs, bratwurst, mac and cheese with like mix-ins. And then you could also put mac and cheese on the hot dog. So you
Nice.
could do like a mac dog
That's
and put like bacon on top.
me all day.
Yeah. And then we'd sell like overpriced waters and Gatorades, warm chocolate chip cookies, also all
Yeah.
you. So we did that. And so
Do you have a partner or anything, or was this just you?
I did have a partner, like my best friend
Sure.
from when I was like living out in Colorado. he like grew up, his mom like ran a bakery, so like he had like a good handle on some of that stuff. Cash only business.
Nice.
Which was a great like, you
Yeah.
know, setup for us, like easy.
Yeah.
And it was fun. And we were in the center of town. We got to meet everybody, like loved it. So because it was like outside, on a rainy day, we'd be pretty slow. So one rainy day, Instagram was like just coming on, and one of our managers, who was a good friend of ours, his brother was like tagging him on all these like Instagram like hot girls. And we're like, who are these people? Like, you know, this was on like 100,000 followers, 200,000 followers, were a ton. And like none of us were really on Instagram. We're like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And so it was the summer that Facebook IPO'd, so people were really into social media. So we got this idea, hey, we're going to start a website, and we're going to like drive traffic to the website with all these like new like social media influencers. That wasn't even like a term at the time.
Sure.
Just like that's what we were going to do.
Yeah.
And so we raised a little bit of money from people we knew in town because, you know, we had success doing a couple of these other businesses. And some guy had just crushed it on the Facebook IPO. So he's like, social media, here you go. And we're like, yes. And so we launched our like crappy little website with like curated like cool guys products. And we quickly found out after like a month or two that the brands we were working with were way more interested in the content we were creating with the influencers and the influencers posting than anything our website was doing. So we pretty quickly pivoted, and just for context, we were coming out to LA for a shoot like once a month or every other month, and we'd just try to pack it all into a shoot in 1 or 2 days and then drive back to Colorado.
Were you connecting with people that were living here, or are you bringing people out from like where people were from all over the place? What was kind of the influencer network?
So they were all here.
Okay.
And that was before you could like direct message people, so you had to be like tapped into the network. So we ended up connecting with this photographer randomly, and he was like, what is this idea, like what is going on here? We met him. He helped us curate our first batch of like models and influencers.
Nice.
And it sort of just grew from there. We just grew our network, and then it's continued to grow, and we're like, okay, if we want to like take this seriously and do this, we got to move to LA.
Yeah.
So at that point, like my business partner from Froyo, who was also a business partner on the marketing thing, he didn't want to come to LA. It wasn't his vibe. So he stayed in Colorado, and I moved out here with my business partner, Brandon, who
Yep.
I think you met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I met him.
Yeah. So we moved out here to grow that business, and was like, Aspen was great. Love going there, but it's a small town.
Yeah.
So it was super exciting to be somewhere big and exciting and meeting people who are hustling and doing other things, and
Yeah.
just having like the diversity to like go to like a different neighborhood and like taste different food, or go to a bar
Sure.
and not run into like all of your friends.
Yeah.
To date, like it was super exciting just like coming to LA.
Sure.
Almost chose San Francisco because that's where my sister's at, but it made so much sense for the business for us to be in LA.
Yeah. Of course.
So
I
that's
lived-
how I ended up here.
I lived in San Francisco for like 9 months before
Really?
I moved here. Yeah. I initially thought that it was going to be like the place to go. I mean, coming out of like high school, it was really difficult to find any kind of like music programs. And so it was like
Gotcha.
looking like, you know, this is before like, I mean, Full Sail existed, which was like a relatively big name, like audio engineer training program. I don't know why I just wasn't interested in it.
Yeah.
And I looked at a few other places. I looked at like Savannah College of Art and Design. It was like $40,000 a year for like first 2 years. You weren't even allowed to be in the studio. I was like, dude, I'm gonna pay $80,000 to like literally just be next door to this facility. Like, this is fucking crazy.
Build your own studio for
Literally,
that much.
that rejection was like the first instance that ignited thinking about things in that capacity.
Right.
I mean, I had already had like a small, like what you could buy cheap shit at Guitar Center type
Sure.
setup, but it wasn't like a thought to really develop that into like a career, make that like a, you know, lifelong goal like it's become now. But I lived there for 9 months. I found like the San Francisco College of Extended Learning, which was like not San Francisco State, but like these kind of like weird offshoot classes.
Like specialty school or
Yeah.
whatever, yeah.
And I went there, and it was like teachers basically like teaching from like YouTube videos and like talking. It was like if I just went and started a class somewhere and I was like, yeah, I ran a recording studio in LA, you know, like
What year was this?
2007. I was like 17, 18.
Okay.
Yeah, it was crazy. I moved there when I might have just turned 18. I might have still been 17 when I
Wow.
moved there. I think I moved here when I turned 18. But it was an awesome like city. I met some really awesome like funny people, which I
Yeah.
got super lucky to like just fall into like a crew. You know what I mean?
From your classes?
No, nothing.
Just randomly.
from my like apartment complex. So I lived in a place that
way.
was kind of like Park La Brea-esque, you know, where it's just like not like the
dorms.
towers, but yeah, like the little kind of townhouse style things.
Yeah.
And I met like some a really great like friend group there, and just kind of like attached a wagon to that, and had like
Great.
a good group of friends to hang out with, and got to explore that city. It was awesome. I had always heard like really great things about like the music scene there, and how it was like super supportive of, you know, like independent artists and all of the kind of boxes I wanted to check. But I got a chance to move down here to have like a DJing career. And
Were you
like,
here before your brother?
yeah, so it was kind of like he and I moved here at the same time, which I think was like, or I might have moved here in the fall, and then he moved here the following summer.
Okay.
He lived here for like the summer, which I think was,
Wait, but go back. You said you were coming here to be a DJ?
yeah, it was pretty crazy. So my dad's friend,
Like a radio DJ or
no,
like
no,
a
no,
club? Like,
so my dad's friend, this guy named Jeff Ames, who was like amazing.
Yeah.
He had a like wedding corporate event, bar mitzvah, but mainly like wedding corporate event
yeah.
DJ company. And he was like, dude, come work for me. Like, I could pay you like a minimum of like $1,500 a night. I was like 18. I was like, holy shit.
I know
like,
how to connect speaker wires.
I mean, it was like he was like, I'll train you, whatever. I'll take you out. You'll learn like how to do this. And I moved down here not really like talking to him much more than like that little blip of like, oh yeah, like I can employ you. Cool. I could train you. Come down here. Move down here. It's like, oh, you're not 21. Like I can't really use you as like an employee. I mean, that's how little we talked. Like he had no idea.
But
like
why
what,
couldn't he hire you? Because you weren't
I guess
21.
something to do with like maybe serving alcohol, or just made things more complicated for him than he wanted, you know?
Gotcha.
So he was like, I have a friend who does like bar mitzvah DJing specifically. Like you'd be fine in that world. Like talk to that guy. He was awesome. His name was Marty. I forgot his last name, but super kind, super sweet guy. Like the energetic bar mitzvah DJ guy that you know is like the typical person you think of when you do those kind of events. And he took me like to go to a handful of them. I helped him like schlep equipment and do all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
And like as soon as I got there, I was like, this is not for me at all. Like this is not my personality. I'm not like getting kids up to like come to the dance floor and like leading the show in that. And as great as the money was, like in promise of being like, oh man, I can make $750, still $1,000 a night. Like as an 18-year-old kid, like I'm literally thinking like, dude, I work Friday and Saturday nights either every weekend or every other weekend, and I'm banking like $8,000. Like fuck, like that's amazing. Like just come here, work for 8 days, 6 to 8 days out of the month, and like the rest is like time to do whatever the fuck I want. That didn't work out, and I ended up falling into the audio engineering school I went to here called SAE, which is like another kind of like full sail small whatever they're called, like tech school kind of thing. And you know, then just got rooted here.
That's so wild.
Yeah,
I'm so glad I wound up here as opposed to San Francisco, especially after like
me
being
too.
here, just like energy wise, and I think just like everything else.
Yeah,
like it, just like weather, like
Yeah.
lifestyle. It just
yeah. I mean, San Francisco is really great, but at this point, I'm like, you know, now that I'm living down in Hermosa, that is to me like like I was just talking to Ty about it this afternoon. My dad and I talk about it regularly. Like it is the best weather, like literally like
Just
in the
not too hot.
70s
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
Like it's fucking phenomenal. Like I don't do well in like this, whatever the fuck we're dealing with right now, kind of heat wave. Maybe this is kind of like our final summer is like actually here, 95, 97, 100 degrees. I'm melt. I just cannot survive this. That's like one of the most discouraging things about being in this part of town for me, or like staying here long term. Is like I'm a cold weather kid through and through. Like I love that shit. I miss the snow. I like having seasons.
the seasonality is nice. I miss that for sure of the mountains, where like you have that built-in like chill time. Right?
Yeah.
When the mountain closes and the trails aren't open, you like have to stay at home.
Yeah.
And same thing before the mountain opens.
Yeah.
you're like, it's cold and it's nasty out. So
Yeah.
you like automatically chill out. Like,
Yeah.
cool, we're going to like watch a movie. We're just going to like stay home. And like here it's nonstop for sure. But it's a trade-off. Like being outside year round. But like, I guess like even in Minnesota when it was freezing cold, we were outside all the time. And in Colorado.
Really still?
Yeah, I mean, like, we'd be ice skating. I did, snowboarding, cross-country skiing. We, like, skied every day after school. So, for that. But now that I live in LA, I get, like, super cold when I go to Colorado. But when we were in Colorado, like, you just suit up for it, and it's no big deal.
I'm still noticing a bit of that. Like, I noticed that I've lost some of, like, my resilience to cold weather. But, I still crave it. It's just, like, I don't know how. I haven't been in, like, probably below like minus like negative weather as far as I know in a long time, like anything that's been like sub-zero temperature where I'm like I used to still like kind of thrive in that stuff. Now I feel like I'm gonna be in some pain, but I mean once you learn layering and all that shit, like being in cold weather is just kind of like any other day.
You just have to have the gear.
Okay, so you were doing influencer marketing, social media style company, and then continued on that path?
Yeah, so that like evolved where we're doing a lot of influencer marketing, started getting more into just content creation and support for the companies where we would be driving them traffic through these influencers, but then their feeds, their accounts didn't have compelling content. So we wanted to offer more holistic services, and so we started offering more content based. And this was also at the time where a lot of people were like really focusing on influencers and being like, oh, we're going to build like our exclusive team of influencers and that.
Yeah.
There were a couple companies that like were really doing a big push on that. So we're like, hey, let's like focus on this. Like we'll still tap in and do the influencer thing, but this is a little bit more interesting, a little bit more sustainable. And then especially as the algorithm evolved, I just became less sort of supportive of like the rates that influencers were demanding.
Sure.
Where it's like, I just can't justify,
Totally.
doing this or telling clients to pursue that.
Yeah.
And we saw a more meaningful difference by like compelling content, regularly posting, social media strategy. So we started doing a lot of that. At that time, my business partner, Brandon, how do I want to describe this? He got into a relationship that brought him to the East Coast.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to be in New York with the person he was in love with. And the only job he could do from there, really, like for our business, was sales. So he was going to oversee our sales. We were doing a lot of stuff for agencies who hadn't figured out social media or influencers at the time. So it was like, great, those are all based in New York. You're going to focus on that.
Sure.
He went to New York, and I was like, okay, sweet. I can still bring in some like new business, but Brandon's going to handle that. Where do I want to focus? And I was like, cannabis industry is starting to like emerge. Let's start looking for clients in that space.
Yeah.
Love cannabis. Like my mom is a homeopath, so like plant-based medicine was around growing up.
Yeah.
Something, and I was just a fan of like, I hate being hungover. Like I drank plenty at college, but like, we just agreed with me way better.
Me too.
Yeah.
I just hate alcohol. I just literally like, especially now, honestly, man, I don't know if it's because I drink like even less and even less. I feel like every year I drink less.
Yeah.
When I do drink, I notice like I'm fucking tired. Like it's so bizarre to me, but like I literally feel like I took a sleeping pill if I drink alcohol at this point. Like if I have like two, whatever, like the seltzer,
like tequila soda or something.
no, not even that. Like what's the cans?
Oh, like a White Claw or
yeah,
shit?
if I have like two of those, three of those, like I'm just tired after. Like if I don't know what that is. I just fucking like I have a great night of sleep, but like something about that is just very like unsettling. I've still been kind of shuffling. I don't really smoke weed much anymore either, but I've definitely found that I prefer it with tobacco, like little Fronto or something broken up inside of it. Sometimes like a fully rolled like Fronto like style kind of joint, but it's just like a more of like a upper kind of a thing for me. Whereas if I just smoke like straight weed, sometimes I'll just feel like I'm just like falling asleep.
Yeah, I mean, it's finding what works. Like, I still love, like, going out and, like, if there's a reason to celebrate and, like,
totally
have some wine, have a couple cocktails, I can have fun with that. I just don't like how I am when I get hammered.
Yeah.
I don't like how I feel the next day, and I just turn into, like, a shithead. And so it's like...
I only have one experience with you.
Yeah. We don't need to talk about that. So it's just like, you know, I'm not like big on drinking, but so we started working with cannabis companies being in California. I was like, oh, this is great. I can be like part of the emerging cannabis industry.
Sure.
So we started picking up some cannabis clients because they were interested in social media and influencers because they couldn't get the word out any other way. And they were as excited as I was about them. They're my least favorite clients. Small budgets, super unprofessional, just like were not easy to deal with. We had one company that like onboarded, paid a deposit. They literally disappeared. Like their website went down, couldn't get a hold of them. We're like, okay, that's weird.
Yeah.
And so we had a couple other clients that were doing a little bit better, and we were doing everything for them. They asked us to do their merchandise. I was doing like their training deck, like their fundraising, their price sheets, their packaging. And so we were
like
building
consulting. Yeah, you're like building their entire
we were building
business.
their entire brand. And I was like, what are you guys doing? It's like you're just like growing weed.
Yeah.
Like not that I can grow great cannabis, but
Sure.
I was like,
Yeah,
I
what
think
are we
I
doing
can figure
here?
this out.
Yeah.
So I just started really researching the industry. So going to like nerdy meetups, meeting anybody who like would meet with me.
Sure.
Reading everything I could get my hands on.
Yeah.
And just like getting really into the cannabis like community here as much as possible.
Sure.
Just going to a bunch of dispensaries. At that time, you had to have your like medical card.
Yeah.
Just like buying different products, just
Sure.
seeing what was out there.
Yeah.
And there wasn't anything that really like spoke to me at the time.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, my like early experiences with that were pretty much like going to dispensaries that were like kind of grimy. It felt like Russian mob kind of places
With the
that would be
death
like
door.
an office space. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'd just be like, you're like only allowed one person at a time into this room. You're
Right.
waiting in like this sketchy lobby.
You're like,
to,
am I going to get shot by the next customer?
Literally. You
Yeah.
have no idea if like you're just going to walk into a room and just get robbed. Like it's
Right.
just that like out of the blue. I just walked into some office building that's like gated, black door,
But, like,
security
in our
guard,
neighborhood,
guns.
too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I used to go most of them were either on Melrose or on
Yeah.
Santa Monica and like a little bit further east than I am now, but still be 10 minutes, 5 minutes. I mean, at one point in time, before all the like, you know, big brands started taking over Melrose, there was dispensaries left and right running all through. You know,
Oh, yeah, just trap shops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would go to, I mean, that was the vibe of those places.
They all were, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I get that. You had those kind of experiences with those people.
Yeah, and just was like, you know, seeing that product, and I was like, I can do this better.
Yeah.
And again, researching the industry, and at the time people were flipping out like Candescent, which is a very successful business. Like they do a great job, but at the time their first product was like, oh, this is this like revolutionary brand. They had a jar of top shelf indoor flower inside a box with rolling papers and matches.
Yeah.
People were like, this is perfect for like moms. And I was
Yeah.
like, wait, this is like lights out weed because they grow great
Yeah.
plant material. These people don't know how to roll a good joint.
Yeah.
They don't have a grinder. Like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? Like, this doesn't make sense.
Totally.
So I was like, there's something more here.
Yeah.
And so was starting to explore the space, talk to different people and friends. And then I think it was one Sunday night when we were at your brother's house watching the new Rick and Morty, when we were like on that Rick and Morty kick, and we
Yeah.
would go over and watch like the new one. And we were all living in like,
Walking distance.
which was so fun.
Yeah.
And so your brother lived like down the street from me. You were
Yeah.
super close by. We were over there. And I think I told him like, hey, I'm looking at like thinking about starting like cannabis business. And I think he was just like, cool. Like he just sort of like blew me off. I was like, okay, not like the response I
Yeah.
was like hoping for.
Yeah.
And like, you know, your brother doesn't like consume cannabis. He's like, dude,
Yeah.
I haven't smoked pot since high school. Like,
Yeah.
cool. But like,
I got nothing.
yeah, I got nothing for you.
Yeah.
And then he ran into Dan at like Soho House a week later. And Dan's like, hey, I've been investing in cannabis companies and doing all this stuff. And Tyler's like, oh, interesting. Like my investment banker friend is like
Yeah.
interested in, or like Dan
this
came from
space.
VC. He's
Yeah.
like, oh, interesting. So Tyler's like, hey, I ran into Dan. Maybe we should all like get together. And so like we got together, had a little like brainstorming session. We had like similar theories on the space and what our approach would be. And then Tyler, your brother, started asking around and started to see like a lot of people in his network from the tech world were interested in investing in cannabis.
Yeah.
And they're just like, dude, we have nobody we can trust.
Yeah.
And so Tyler kind of brought us all together because candidly, I probably wouldn't have done it on my own because I was busy like
Yeah,
doing the marketing
for
stuff.
sure.
But we were interested, had a couple of meetings, brainstormed some stuff together. Like through the marketing company, we started doing some designs, mocking stuff up, put together a fundraising deck, went out, started like raising some capital, and built out Palms and like the first iteration of it. And it took a long while for us to sort of like get to market.
Sure. I mean,
or just longer than we expected.
I mean, dude, the hoops, the obstacles, the regulations, the confusion of what I'm sure that must have been just absolutely brutal as far as like the learning curve going through that. Still probably is a total train wreck, total mess.
I mean, our first distributor lied to us, and like they didn't have a license, and we got introduced to them by one of our like investors or partners, and then we're like, yeah, can we like come see like our product? Can you send us your license? They couldn't send us their license. We showed up, and it was in their garage.
Oh wow!
And we're like,
yeah, what the fuck are we doing
like
here?
This shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And so like they're like, this can't be here, but nobody was like really like enforcing at the time, so we were able to like fix that, but that delayed us like being able to launch by like a month or so.
Sure.
And it was just funny timing where it was right when the CR regulations came out, and so because we had a small enough batch of product, we were able to like get on top of it, get it into child resistant packaging with the proper like warning labels and stuff on it, and it was like your brother and I just like stuffing bags and like doing stuff to like upgrade our product, and because our product was compliant, we were able to get into some accounts. Yeah. And that sort of like launched us. And
I mean, you can see like obviously like when you have people who are willing to hustle and you're in an industry that is very like lackadaisical at best, you know what I mean? Like shady, lackadaisical, to have
just
people,
emerging industry.
Yeah. Yeah. To have professional people who you interface with, I'm sure carries so much value.
Yeah, I mean, just certain things of like how we were presenting our packaging, our sales materials. Yeah. We did it like beautiful presentation and like gifting boxes. Yeah. At the time, that was like pretty ahead of the curve. Yeah. There's a lot of people that have caught up to us. Sure. And, it's easy to level up like packaging, right? People see our stuff, it's going to get copied. Sure. But we were just fortunate at the time to get in at the right time, have great people supporting us as far as investors, advisors, investors. We surrounded ourselves with really smart people that we were able to learn from. People from cannabis, like deep in the cannabis game, like who knew all like the sketchy shops we were talking about a minute ago, and then people who come from traditional like consumer packaged goods background. Yeah. That could give us an idea of like where we want to head, and connected us with their packaging people to like lower our cost. So we feel really fortunate to have like built the team that we have, surrounding us and supporting us. Yeah, you guys are killing it, man. Honestly, I mean, it's great to watch from the sidelines and just kind of catch, the highlights. I'm sure there's a lot more. There's some lowlights. Yeah, being in the trenches. I mean, I get it. Anything you're starting, anytime you're trying to one up and grow in all those different stages. I mean, just putting all this together as a learning curve, still a learning curve. For sure. Still a matter of like, what lenses work, what lights work. Like but it looks good, man. Even like how it's moved from like in the last couple of weeks. Yeah, no, I mean it's settling. You know what I mean? My goal was to be shooting by like the beginning of July, but just going through the process of, learning curve, setbacks, ordering cameras, having cameras be delivered, and realizing like, oh shit, I got the wrong lens on this camera. This isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. These lights that I currently have right now, I'm not really a big fan of. Now that it's like getting hot, I can't run that air conditioner. I can't have a fan on. It's too loud, noise, all that stuff. Like I'm trying to do central air for the whole place, but that's going to be like a $15,000 close down for some time process. Put in like duct work. Yeah, I mean, we're going to do 2 zones upstairs and then like break out the top windows right there and put a mini split there. So it'll ideally like cool this whole thing. I might have to curtain off like that back space too. So that way I can just kind of keep everything contained as far as like the studio goes. But yeah, man. I mean, I feel like we probably pretty much nailed everything at this point.